The hum of the machines echoed softly against the concrete walls of the Harvest Hill supermarket's back laundry room. A faint smell of detergent and starch lingered in the air, mixed with the sharper scent of metal from old carts stacked in the corner. It was near closing time, and most of the staff had filtered out, except for one. Nick Jensen, at least, that was the name on his name tag, pushed open the door with one hand, still adjusting the collar of his work shirt with the other. He was here to pick up his uniform for the next day's shift, just like any other evening. Just another quiet routine in a life that wasn't supposed to draw attention. Then he heard it. A muffled sound. Not the machines. Not the pipes. Quieter. Raw. He turned slowly. She was sitting on the floor between two industrial dryers, knees pulled to her chest, face hidden in her arms. Her shoulders trembled. A basket of folded rags sat untouched beside her. Nick paused. He could have backed away, walked out, pretended he hadn't seen, but he didn't. Instead, he stepped forward, careful not to startle her. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low. "You okay?" She looked up, eyes red, cheeks damp. For a second, she just stared. Then something in her expression shifted, not recognition, not fear, just exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. I just needed a second." Nick crouched beside her, resting his elbows on his knees. "It's all right." Silence filled the space again, but it wasn't empty. She took a shaky breath. "My mom passed away 3 months ago," she said, eyes not meeting his. "I'm all my little sister has now. She's 9. I work nights here, mornings at the diner. And today, Her voice broke. Nick felt something in his chest constrict. She wiped her face roughly with her sleeve, as if trying to erase what she'd said. "You don't have to be here. I'll be fine." But he stayed. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she said. "Emily Grace." Nick nodded slowly. "I'm Nick." Another beat of silence. "I'm not usually like this," she added, forcing a faint smile. "It's just been a lot." Nick looked at her. Really looked. The way her hands trembled slightly, the way her eyes held a grief far older than her years. And something inside him shifted. He wasn't supposed to intervene. This was supposed to be research, observation, anonymity. But her words had broken through something he thought was long buried. "You don't have to be fine all the time," he said. Her eyes flicked to his, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not comfort exactly, but recognition. A quiet understanding, fragile as breath. The following evening, the store was lit in a tired kind of way, fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead, casting a pale blue hue across the aisles. The world outside had turned to frost, and the windows sweated from the difference in temperature. It was the kind of night where everything felt heavier than it should. Emily moved through aisle 9, restocking cans of soup in quiet rhythm. She worked with her sleeves pushed to her elbows, fingertips red from the cold that lingered even indoors. Her movements were precise but dull, like someone running on borrowed time. Nick, clipboard in hand, pretended to check inventory near the end of the aisle. He wasn't scheduled for a full shift, but he came in anyway, under the excuse of covering for someone. Truthfully, he couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she sat on the floor between the machines. The sound of her voice when she said, "I just needed a second." "Emily," a voice called from the front. Mr. Halloran, the assistant manager, stomped toward her with a clipboard and that forced briskness people used to feel taller than they were. She stood up straighter. "Yes, sir. I've gone over the schedule for next week. You're on all evening shifts, Monday through Saturday. Sundays we're closed. You'll need to find someone to cover that Tuesday if you still plan on taking it off." Emily blinked. "I put in a request, just one day. My sister's teacher asked for a parent to come in for her school project. It's a family history thing. And she doesn't have anyone else." Halloran shrugged. "One more missed shift and you're off the schedule. You know the policy." She swallowed hard. "But I haven't missed. Last month, 2 call-outs. One for your sister's fever. The other, I don't know, dentist. He didn't even check his papers. Point is, we need people we can count on." Emily's voice dropped. I've been on time. I stay late. I cover other shifts. Halloran gave her a look of practiced indifference. Then you should understand we're counting on you to be here when scheduled. That's all. He walked off, leaving silence and the low hum of overhead lights in his wake. Nick hadn't moved. He stayed frozen beside a shelf of crackers, knuckles white on the edge of his clipboard. He had heard every word, and for a moment, he wasn't standing in aisle 9 of a rural Montana store. He was 17 again, standing in a dimly lit kitchen with peeling linoleum, watching his mother grip the edge of the counter, swaying on her feet. She had just finished her third night shift in a row at one of his warehouses, back when they were still just leased spaces, before they bore the name Harvest Hill. She hadn't complained, not once, until the night she collapsed. He remembered the thud of her body hitting the floor, the plate that shattered, how her fingers still twitched even after she hit the ground. He remembered the way the doctor said exhaustion, like it was a footnote, something people were supposed to survive. She hadn't. Emily bent down, picked up a fallen can, and held it for a second longer than she needed to. Nick walked toward her slowly, heart thudding. You all right? She forced a smile. Yeah, just a long day. He said nothing. She returned to stacking. He crouched beside her, picking up a can and setting it gently beside the others. Your sister, how old is she? 9, Emily said, not looking at him. But sometimes I think she's older than me. Nick waited. When she didn't stop him, he asked, and it's just you two? Just us. She hesitated. I moved back after our mom's cancer got bad. I was in school, out in Missoula, left right before finals. I thought I'd go back eventually, but her voice trailed off. Anyway, my sister was 7, too little to understand anything, but old enough to ask why I wasn't coming back when Mom died. The silence that followed was thick with something raw. Nick set another can down. They should have let you have that day off. Emily let out a small, humorless laugh. They could fire me tomorrow and they'd replace me in a week. Maybe less. People need work. They'll take anything. Her words hit like a blow. Because he had made it that way. The hiring policies, the shift rotation system, the 3 strikes rule meant to improve attendance. He'd written the first draft of that himself, sitting in a high-rise 10 years ago, convinced he was building something sustainable. Now he saw what it really was, a machine. One that didn't notice who it hurt. One that let people like Halloran become gatekeepers of fear. He said nothing. She finally looked at him. Sorry, didn't mean to dump all that. You didn't, Nick said, and meant it. She stood, brushing off her knees. You probably think I'm dramatic. He shook his head. I think you're doing the best you can. Emily tilted her head, curious. You always talk like that? Like what? Like people matter. Nick's breath caught. Don't they? He asked. Emily gave him a look he couldn't quite read. Then she turned and pushed her cart slowly down the aisle, leaving him standing alone in the quiet hum of fluorescent light. That night, Nick sat in his truck outside the store long after the others had gone. The windshield fogged with his breath. He gripped the steering wheel and stared at the dim glow of the store sign. He thought of Emily, of her sister, of his mother collapsing in a too-small kitchen, with no one to catch her. He thought of the company reports stacked in his Manhattan office, of the quarterly earnings calls, of the board's push for efficiency metrics. He thought of every name he'd never learned, the ones who stocked shelves and cleaned floors and folded uniforms in laundry rooms. And for the first time in years, Nick Jensen, CEO of Harvest Hill, felt ashamed of the empire he had built. The rhythm of the store returned, checkout beeps, cartwheels squeaking, quiet country songs looping from the overhead speakers. But Nick Jensen began to notice everything differently now. He watched Emily from a distance most days, not to intrude, not to monitor, just to see, to understand. She moved through the store with practiced grace, never rushing, never stalling. She swept the floor with quiet precision, bagged groceries with care, helped customers find items that had been misplaced, even when it wasn't her department. She always said yes when someone asked for help. Always. But she never truly smiled. Not the kind of smile that lit from the center and reached the eyes. Not anymore. Even when customers thanked her, even when a child tugged at her apron to ask where the marshmallows were, she smiled like someone who had learned the expression but forgotten the feeling. Nick had seen employees hustle before. He had rewarded grit, promoted it, but Emily's work wasn't about climbing a ladder. It was about survival. Once, he saw her pause in front of the cereal shelf. Just for a second, he thought she was reading something, but then her shoulders sank. She lifted her hand to her temple, fingers pressed, just once, and let it fall. She caught herself, like someone who didn't believe in the luxury of tiredness. Another night, he stayed late to file delivery reports and watched her from the break room window. It was 11:37 p.m. The store had closed. Most staff had gone home, but there she was, on her knees by the freezer aisle, scrubbing a milk spill long since dried. The lights above her flickered as the motion sensor fought sleep. She didn't see him. Her face was bent low, brow furrowed, lips moving silently. He realized then that she must have volunteered to stay and clean. No one had asked. He watched her stand, wipe her hands on her apron, and look at her reflection in the freezer glass. She didn't look tired. She looked invisible. One afternoon, during the slow hour before dinner, a storm rolled in. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The customers thinned. A soft gray dimness fell across the store like a film. Nick was stocking shelves with canned peaches when he heard her voice. Low, steady, talking to someone at the pharmacy counter. He moved without thinking, down one aisle, then another, until he saw her. Emily stood beside a small girl, about 9, with dark braids and a loose jacket. Her sister. Nick realized instantly. The girl clutched Emily's sleeve as they spoke to the pharmacist, who was explaining something in a clipped, distant tone. I'm sorry, the pharmacist said, but without insurance, it's $62.45. Emily reached into her wallet. He saw her fingers hesitate. She counted, then paused. The pharmacist looked past her, disinterested. You can come back later, she offered, already turning to another task. Emily nodded once, gently tugging her sister back toward the checkout. The little girl looked up. But Emmy, my chest still hurts. Emily knelt, brushing a strand of hair behind the girl's ear. We'll fix it soon, I promise. Nick watched from behind the end cap of cat food. He didn't move, didn't speak. But the next day, when Emily arrived for her shift, a plain white envelope sat in her locker. Inside, a gift card for the pharmacy. No note, no signature, just the words for what matters most. She never mentioned it, but Nick saw her the following evening, pressing something into her sister's hands. A bottle of medicine, a smile, soft and barely there. That night, he sat in his truck again, staring out at the dim parking lot. The rain came steady this time, slicing down the windshield. The wipers ticked back and forth like a heartbeat. He didn't know what he was doing anymore. He only knew he couldn't look away. She caught him watching once. Not obviously, not long, just a glance from across the break room. She tilted her head, puzzled, but didn't say anything. The moment passed. Later, as they both restocked a shelf in the baking aisle, she broke the silence. You always work the shifts no one wants? He smiled faintly. Maybe. She leaned on her cart, her expression unreadable. You ever feel like the person you used to be got lost somewhere between closing time and the morning shift? He hesitated. Yeah, he said. All the time. Emily studied him. Most people just forget, she said softly, that there's a person behind the name tag. Nick swallowed. And what if the person behind the name tag forgot too? She didn't answer right away. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out a small folded receipt. On the back, drawn in pen, was a sketch of a bird. Wings outstretched, barely detailed, but free. A child's drawing. My sister made it, she said. Said I looked like the bird when I come home from work. Nick took it, carefully. It's not much, she added. But sometimes I look at it and think, maybe we're just tired birds, waiting for a better sky. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. But when she walked away, he tucked the receipt into his pocket. Not because he needed it, but because he knew he already did. That week, he started asking questions, quietly, to the regional managers who thought he was just another shift supervisor. He dug into the employee turnover rate, health benefits, the PTO system. He asked about single-parent support, shift flexibility, why they didn't offer child care options in rural branches. The answers were dry, disconnected. We try to stay competitive in the retail market. People in these towns take what they can get. Turnover's normal for this tier. Nick Jensen had said those things once. Now he heard them like glass breaking. He sat at the staff computer after hours and opened the spreadsheet of store wages. Emily's name was there. Her base pay. No benefits. No vacation accrued yet. He shut the screen. In the darkness of the office, he leaned back in the chair, eyes on the ceiling. For the first time since stepping into the store under a false name, Nick realized he wasn't watching anymore. He was grieving. Not for Emily, for every person like her he'd never seen. The days grew shorter. Montana's early winter wrapped the town in silence by 5 each evening. At Harvest Hill, the hum of overhead lights and distant country music carried through nearly empty aisles, broken only by the occasional voice over the intercom. Emily was assigned to stock the holiday section that week. Plastic wreaths, cinnamon-scented candles, rows of discounted string lights. She moved through the display slowly, methodically, setting each item down as if trying to will herself into the rhythm of it. Nick watched from checkout lane 4. He was supposed to be training a new cashier, but his eyes kept drifting. He saw how Emily moved, efficient but absent, as though her body had learned what her spirit no longer had the energy to care about. Late that evening, just before closing, she found him outside the loading dock, sitting on a crate with a coffee cup warming his hands. "You always hide back here?" she asked. Nick glanced up, startled, then smiled. "Sometimes. It's quieter than the break room." She nodded. "You mind if I join you?" He shook his head, shifted slightly, and made room beside him. They sat for a few moments without speaking, the cold sneaking between their jackets. Beyond the loading bay, snow dusted the asphalt. A single street lamp hummed overhead, its glow casting long shadows across the crates. "I used to think silence was uncomfortable," Emily said at last. "But now I think it's just honest." Nick turned toward her slightly, but didn't interrupt. She looked down at her hands. "My sister asked me today if Mom's voice is still somewhere in the world. Like, even if she's gone. If her voice still floats around, in space or something." I didn't know what to say. He nodded slowly. "What did you tell her?" I said maybe. That maybe the world doesn't lose voices like that. Maybe they find new ways to echo. Nick's hand tightened slightly on his cup. "That's a good answer." Emily offered a faint smile, then added, "She used to sing. My mom. Not well, but soft. Like a hum you didn't know you needed until it stopped." She paused. "There was this night. When I was little, we were in the car. It was raining. I remember her humming something, this lullaby she made up. And then, her voice caught. There was a crash. Everything spun. I woke up in a ditch. Smoke. Blood. Screaming." Nick froze. "I couldn't move." Emily continued, voice low, detached. "The door was jammed. I screamed and then, someone was there. A man. He pulled her out first. I think he carried her to the road, came back for me. I just remember his hands. And his voice. He told me I was safe. That help was coming." She looked over at Nick, eyes shimmering. "He said his name was Daniel Hale." The world tilted. Nick's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, landed with a dull thud on the crate below. He didn't pick it up. Emily didn't seem to notice. She was staring out into the dark. "We never found him," she said. "He was just gone by the time the ambulance came. No one knew who he was. I used to dream about him. I called him Mr. Angel for years. I even drew a picture and gave it to him that night. I think I was 7. Nick's voice, when it came, was barely audible. "What did the drawing look like?" Emily turned to him, surprised. "A person with wings," she said, holding my mom's hand. "I wrote, 'Thanks for saving my mom, Mr. Angel,' at the top. I don't know why I remember that." Nick stood slowly. His legs felt unsteady. He looked down at her, this woman who had walked back into his life without either of them knowing. The little girl with the broken voice and the fierce eyes. He had kept that drawing, folded it into his wallet, then framed it years later and placed it in his study, where no one ever went. A talisman, a reminder of what mattered, of what nearly didn't. Emily stared up at him now, brow furrowed. "Nick?" she asked softly, but he couldn't speak. His past had just reached out through time and touched him. Not with blame, not even with recognition, just quiet gravity. He managed one word. "I remember." Emily blinked. "What?" Nick turned toward the snow and whispered, "I remember the rain, and the girl who wouldn't stop crying until she saw her mom open her eyes." Emily stood too now, confused. You knew her?" she asked, voice trembling. "I was on the road, coming back from a construction site. I wasn't supposed to be there. I saw the wreck and stopped." He swallowed hard. "You were curled in the back seat. And your mom, she wasn't breathing at first." Emily's breath caught. "You're him," she whispered. Nick couldn't look at her. "I wasn't supposed to stay," he said. "I called for help and disappeared before the sirens came. I didn't want to be found. Not back then." Emily stepped closer. "Daniel Hale." He nodded. "That was me," he said, "before I changed everything." They stood in the cold, the street lamp flickering above, silence spreading wide between them like the snow at their feet. Emily pressed her hand to her mouth, tears slipping free. "You saved her," she said. Nick's eyes shone too now, his voice breaking. "I tried." She shook her head slowly. "You did." He finally met her eyes. "And I never forgot you." They stood without speaking for a long time. Then Emily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, carefully, quietly, as though neither of them were sure if this moment was real. And Nick Jensen, CEO, savior, stranger, stood in the arms of the girl who had drawn him wings. A storm moved in by the weekend, thick clouds folding low over the town like a breath held too long. Wind rattled the windows of the Harvest Hill store. Inside, the lights buzzed against the gloom, and Emily moved through her shift like someone underwater, quiet, efficient, watching time pass in pieces. Since that night behind the loading dock, she hadn't said much to Nick, not because she didn't want to, but because something between them had cracked open, and now everything felt fragile. Holy, like a moment you don't touch too soon, or it might slip away. He didn't press. He nodded when their eyes met, passed her the inventory sheet without a word, let the silence between them carry more meaning than small talk ever could. But what she didn't know was that he hadn't slept since. That night, after she went home, he sat in his truck for hours with the framed drawing in his lap, the one she'd made, with the angel and the words, "Thanks for saving my mom, Mr. Angel." He traced the lines of it with his thumb, and made a decision. The first package arrived Monday morning. A brown paper bag, left just inside her front door. No knock, no name. Inside, groceries, eggs, milk, cereal, a bag of dried pasta, 2 small oranges, and a note written in plain black ink. "From a friend of your mother's." Emily stood in the hallway, stunned, fingers still curled around the bag handles. She stepped outside, but the porch was empty, the street silent. Her sister, May, found the oranges first. She lit up like it was Christmas. "They smell like the ones Mom used to buy," she said, holding one to her nose. Emily watched her and said nothing. The second package came Wednesday. This one was smaller, a thin cardboard box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside, a pale blue music box, carved wood with a tiny silver key at the bottom. When Emily wound it, it played a soft, tinny melody. She froze. That lullaby, her mother's, the one she used to hum while folding laundry, while brushing May's hair, the one that had played the night of the accident, through the broken windows and the rain. She pressed the box to her chest. The music kept playing, unbothered by memory. She didn't cry. Not yet. That Friday, she opened her locker at the store and found a framed drawing inside. Her drawing, carefully preserved, just as she had given it all those years ago, folded and creased, but unmistakable. her child handwriting still visible beneath the crayon wings. There was no card, no signature, only the drawing, now behind glass, with a brass plate beneath it engraved with one line. To those who remember. Emily stared at it, her breath catching. The break room behind her buzzed with fluorescent light and vending machine clicks. But in her hands was the quiet weight of a world she thought she had forgotten. She sat down slowly, the frame in her lap, and she let the tears come, not out of sadness, not even grief, but because someone had remembered, because someone had chosen to. Nick watched from down the hall. He didn't step closer, didn't say a word. He just leaned against the wall, hand in his pocket, listening to the music box melody echo from her locker, soft, broken, and beautiful. He'd paid a studio to recreate it from a scratchy old voicemail her mother once left at the hospital. It had taken weeks, cost more than he expected. He didn't care. He'd kept that voicemail for years without knowing why. Now he did. That weekend, Emily found a bundle of envelopes inside her mailbox. No return address. Inside each one, a grocery store gift card, a pharmacy card, a note written in the same plain handwriting. For May's asthma medication, for the coat she's outgrown, for a night without worry. Each note folded once. No names. Emily sat at the kitchen table after May had gone to bed. All the envelopes spread before her like pieces of a puzzle. The heater clicked softly in the corner. A candle burned low beside the sink. She didn't know what to think, what to feel. Part of her wanted to believe it was from Nick, but part of her knew he would never claim it. He would just give. Quietly, like the man who had pulled her from the car, like the man who hadn't waited for applause. And suddenly it wasn't about the music box or the gift cards. It was about the way it made her feel. Seen, protected, remembered. One night, she sat with May on the living room floor, the drawing propped on the coffee table beside them. May traced the angel with her finger. "Did you really draw this when you were my age?" she asked. Emily nodded. "I was scared. But someone helped me. Someone I never saw again." May tilted her head. "You think he still remembers you?" Emily smiled faintly. I think sometimes people come back when we need them, even if we don't recognize them right away." May leaned into her side. "Like magic." "Not magic," Emily whispered. "Kindness." And in the quiet that followed, the music box began to play again. Soft, steady. The sound of something lost returning home. The staff meeting was called on a Wednesday. It wasn't usual. Emily arrived just before noon, still wearing her apron from stocking the produce aisle. Around her, the small crew gathered slowly, young cashiers, tired clerks, one elderly janitor. Mr. Halloran stood near the front, fidgeting with his clipboard, clearly out of his depth. Someone whispered, "What's this about?" But no one had answers. Emily leaned against a metal shelf in the break room, arms crossed, heart ticking faster than usual. She spotted Nick standing near the back wall, not in uniform, just a plain sweater and dark jeans. His face unreadable. Halloran cleared his throat. "We've been asked to pause operations for the afternoon. Corporate sent someone. He's here to speak with you." Confused murmurs. Nick stepped forward. Emily frowned. He wasn't holding a clipboard. No radio at his waist. Just a stillness about him that quieted the room. "My name's not Nick Jensen," he said. The break room fell silent. "My name is Nick Jensen," he repeated, slower this time. "But not the way you've known it." People looked at one another, unsure. "I started this company 10 years ago. I was 27, just a kid who wanted to do better than the warehouses I grew up around. I thought if I made it efficient, clean, scalable, it would help people. I built Harvest Hill out of those ideas, and then I left it to run on systems." He looked around. No one moved. "I came back 6 months ago, undercover, to see what we'd become." A stock boy dropped his pen. "I came here pretending to be someone else," Nick continued. "But it didn't take long to remember what mattered. Because of someone I met. Because of something I'd almost forgotten." He turned then, slowly, and looked directly at Emily. Her breath caught. He didn't blink. "She doesn't know I'm going to say this," he said quietly. "But a long time ago, I pulled a woman from a burning car. She had a daughter with her, a little girl who gave me a drawing before the ambulance came. Emily's knees nearly gave. He kept going. I kept that drawing. Through everything. Through board meetings and profit reports and years where I forgot why I started this. And then, in this store, I met that little girl again. The silence was absolute. She didn't remember me, but I remembered her. He stepped closer to Emily, but didn't touch her. You reminded me what strength looks like, he said. It's not loud. It doesn't wear a title. It shows up, day after day, when no one claps, when nothing changes. Her eyes were wet now, but she didn't look away. I watched you care for your sister. I saw how hard you worked. I saw what the system took from you, and I realized that I built that system. He looked down, jaw clenched. I failed you. Not just you, everyone like you. The mothers, the caregivers, the ones who hold the quiet weight of survival. Then he turned back to the room. And I'm here to say, publicly, plainly, it's not enough to notice. We're changing this. Today. The staff stared. We're launching a new initiative for caregivers and single parents. Paid leave, flexible shifts, emergency support, and more. Real support, not slogans. Someone clapped, awkwardly at first. Then more joined. The sound built, not thunderous, but real. Grateful. Surprised. Emily didn't move. Nick turned back to her. His voice lowered. I didn't come back to save you, Emily. He paused. You reminded me how to save myself. She nodded. Once. A slow, trembling motion. Outside the break room, the lights buzzed. Somewhere down aisle 6, the intercom played a soft instrumental version of Take Me Home, Country Roads. No one moved for a long time. Then Emily stepped forward and hugged him. Not for the cameras, not for the team, but because the moment had waited years for them both to be ready. Snow fell soft and slow that morning, blanketing the ground in silence. The three of them stood at the edge of the small cemetery, breath visible in the cold. Emily held May's gloved hand. Nick stood just behind them, one hand tucked in his coat pocket, the other holding a simple bouquet of evergreens. The headstone was modest, gray granite, worn smooth by time. Margaret Grace, mother, teacher, loved. May placed a pine cone at its base. She always liked winter, she whispered. Emily nodded, brushing her fingers along the stone. Her eyes didn't shine with fresh tears, just a quiet peace. Nick stepped forward and knelt. He rested his hand on the stone, fingers spread gently across the carved letters. His voice was low. I didn't save her then, but I can protect what she left behind. Emily looked at him. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Later, back at the store, the new sign was already up, Harvest Hill Care Fund. Because the strongest deserve rest. Emily had been promoted to assistant manager. She now led orientation for every new hire. Her name the first thing they saw on welcome packets. May was enrolled in counseling and tutoring through a new company program, her asthma treatments fully covered. Nick didn't go back to headquarters. He stayed in town, sometimes helping on the floor, sometimes just watching from the back office with the door open. One evening, May sat behind the register drawing with colored pens. She looked up and asked, "Are you staying forever?" Nick smiled. "I think I'm staying for what matters." Emily glanced at him, her eyes soft. Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet, unhurried, and somewhere between the old pain and the new promise, they stood not at the end of something, but at the very start, the beginning of something better.